So I think we have a smoking gun story where we see this inflammation that's significant in the tissues, and you've got to ask, where did it come from? It's got to come from the diet, and then you get backwards. Well, where in the diet could it possibly come from? And
Yeah.
what's happened in the last, 50 years
Yeah.
in our diet?
When you say it's got to come from the diet, why is it? Why is that your
Well,
viewpoint?
because arachidonic acid and omega sixes these are essential fatty acids,
Body
and
can't make them on its own.
correct. You have to get them from the diet. So that's sort of prima facie evidence again that
Yeah.
the
So
diet's
so
involved.
so
But
you didn't prove, as
right,
when we say prove, we're being, as a scientist, we didn't prove directly that it was the seed oils, but you're basically saying it's very difficult to imagine where else this would come from.
right, because that's been the big change.
Yeah.
And if again, we had the same problem with cigarettes and cancer. If you
Right.
remember, for
Right.
years, cigarettes don't cause cancer. And it would use the example that, well, not everybody gets cancer that smokes. That's true. But they get heart disease and COPD and other things and
Yeah.
strokes and
Yeah.
diabetes and Alzheimer's, but they're not, oh,
Right.
it's not connected causally. But we all know it actually probably is. It just took a long time to really find the exact proof and the methylation events or the
Yeah.
mutational events.
Yeah. And we're talking
So
about
in
stochastic biological processes here. Like,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So this is, hard to prove that cause and effect. But I could tell you this: the dietary studies, the epidemiology studies, that's a different science than lab-based studies.
Yeah.
If you look at epidemiology and diet histories and all that, they have some inaccuracies to them, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's why people go to meta-analyses and try to prove their case, because one study is not, the be all and end all of like a gene knockout study.
Yep.
Ours is also flawed because you have it's translational research. You're looking at heterogeneity of 81 patients. But there's this definite trend here that's statistically significant that we see in the lipidomics technology. And we also did spatial transcriptomics, which was looking at the gene expression of individual cells within the tissue. And we related ALOX5 and 5AP overexpression the very tumors that had the highest LTB4 levels. So we're seeing, the enzymes responsible for breaking down the inflammatory lipids to lipid mediators are inflammatory in the actual tissues. We see the lipid levels in the tissues. And yes, we got to relate it back to something in our diet. Now, what's changed our diet? It started with margarine. It started with adding seed oils to foods instead of, saturated fats. And people say, well, heart attacks have changed when we went from saturated fats to margarine. We reduced heart attack risk. Well, that may be true because you reduce saturated fats, but now if you replace them with an unbiased additive of polyunsaturated omega sixes, I think that becomes inflammatory. So, studies can be manipulated lots of different ways. That's why I like the hard science of lipidomics and tissue spatial transcriptomics and things we did, as opposed to just purely dietary histories. And I mean, how really carefully can you take dietary history on someone?
Right.
And when you go to a restaurant, right, it's Russian roulette
Yeah. You don't
for
know.
what. Well, put a Dexcom on your or one of these glucometers on your arm.